Space. Earth. In the near future, at the end of the 20th century. Nuclear war has engulfed the planet.
Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. Released initially on May 1st of 2013, the game has also seen re-releases on Xbox One and PS5. As the name suggests, Blood Dragon was initially sold as DLC for Far Cry 3, but has since enjoyed a cult following that has seen it become one of those rare standalone DLCs that can hold its own against the base game. Far Cry 3 was a tropical first-person shooter that experienced heaps of hype following its reveal at Ubisoft's press conference during E3 2011. And even with all the hype surrounding it, Far Cry 3 experienced tremendous amounts of success, with reports in 2014 suggesting that the shooter sold somewhere around 10 million copies. So it came as no surprise that the game would receive some form of campaign-based DLC. But it came as a shock to many that the DLC would not build upon any of the story seen in the main game, but that the DLC would explore an entirely new story. The story would follow Sergeant Rex Powercolt, a futuristic cyber commando from the year 2007. The synthwave, sci-fi, cyberpunk aesthetic gives the series something new that it never had before. Less vines and palm trees and more cyber sharks and cyber crocodiles?
Part man, part machine, but all cyber commando.
The game opens with Rex helicoptering into a futuristic island that is supposedly housing a nefarious rogue agent that controls a devastating cyber weapon. Your job as Rex is to put a stop to said rogue agent and any plans he might have with the cyber weapon. Rex is accompanied by Spider, a friend whose personality aligns perfectly with the crude humor often portrayed throughout the Far Cry series.
Let's show them how cyber commandos get it done.
Mark 4 style, motherfucker!
Blood Dragon's gameplay does not stray very far from Far Cry 3's, and plays like many other open-world first-person shooters. Like any traditional open-world sandbox, the world is your oyster. If you choose to stick to the main story missions alone, you're more than welcome to. Blood Dragon introduces most of its gameplay components during its mandatory runtime. Something else that keeps gameplay fresh is the variety of enemies you encounter during the time spent on the island. Primarily, the cannon fodder in this game are members of Omega Force. Omega Force is the enemy faction working against you and your quest to fulfill Sergeant Colt's dream of world peace. Omega Force consists of several different foot soldiers that are typically equipped with fully automatic weapons, sniper rifles, shotguns, and flamethrowers. An Omega Force heavy gunner also presents a significant threat while attempting to overtake the many garrisons found throughout the island. Some of Omega Force even yield throwables such as cyber-themed Molotov cocktails, which are referred to as Molotoxes throughout the game. These are only a few examples of the enemies you will face as Rex Power Colt as you progress through the main story. Packing this wide variety of enemies into a game's runtime is impressive, seeing as the main story only lasts around 5 hours when choosing to ignore any extracurriculars the game has to offer. Early on in said story, you are introduced to the antagonist of the game, Colonel Ike Sloan. Sloan, as it just so happens, is Colt and Spider's former commanding officer. Sloan's story leaves something to be desired, but it is serviceable. He plans to weaponize dragon blood taken from blood dragons with the intention of enslaving innocent civilians. Rex is able to thwart Sloan's first attempt at launching his cyber weapon, but it comes at a cost. Rex and Spider are captured and the latter is killed in front of Rex. Rex is released back onto the island thanks to the help of Dr. Elizabeth Darling, a scientist that formerly worked alongside Colonel Sloan to create his weaponized agent. Rex seeks to take back the island that is overrun by Omega Force and gain intel that might help him put an end to Sloan's plans. It is at this point that Rex is formally introduced to the Blood Dragons. blood dragons present the most significant threat to Rex, so much so that it is at times best to avoid the dragons altogether. This can be done by crouching and distracting the dragons by throwing the cybernetic hearts of fallen Omega Force foot soldiers. Outposts featured in Far Cry 3 are back in Blood Dragon, but are referred to as garrisons and are capable of providing some of the most fun in the game. Much like outposts, garrisons are locations on the island filled with enemies that must be cleared to reveal additional locations on the map. Something the Far Cry series has always excelled in is its ability to provide the player with options in terms of how they choose to approach unsuspecting enemies. Garrisons can be approached both stealthily and loudly, both of which are viable strategies that are often equally satisfying. Once these garrisons are cleared, certain side quests are made available. Among these side quests are hostage missions that provide a fun opportunity to use stealth in an attempt to eliminate enemies without being detected. Completion of this side quest provide the player with weapon upgrades that can be obtained from the vending machine-esque shops found around the island. The island is much smaller than that of any other Far Cry game. However, that is by no means a bad thing. Navigating the island is relatively easy and can be done through the use of a variety of vehicles. While one of Far Cry 3's initial selling points was its scale, Blood Dragon almost seems to accept that it cannot compete with the base game's scale and instead focuses on providing the player with a smaller 80s themed playground that focuses more on fun and zany aspects that were beloved in the base game.
A-rush perfection, baby!
The island also houses numerous wildlife whose locations can be observed via the map. As previously mentioned, these animals are quasi-cybernetic, feeding even further into the outrageously futuristic 2007 setting in which the game takes place. These animals can be a significant threat to the player, however cannot be skinned. They do however play a significant role in the side quests found throughout the game. These specific side quests see the player attempt to hunt specific wildlife while adhering to specific weapon limitations. These missions, much like any other mission within the game, present the player with in-game currency and experience that is capable of equipping Sergeant Rex Power Colt with new abilities. These abilities are not selected by the player, but are instead automatically assigned to Rex. Some might see this as a drawback, but I actually enjoyed not having to pause the game to contemplate between several different options within a skill tree. That being said, Blood Dragon does not skimp out on abilities, providing the player with a potential 30 levels, all of which can upgrade Sergeant Power Colt in some capacity. Just another example of Blood Dragon catering to players who desire a more linear experience while allowing more dedicated players to explore as much as possible. As the main story nears its conclusion, Rex's thirst for revenge grows even stronger as the doctor that sided with him is captured shortly after becoming romantically involved with him. This happens shortly after Rex obtains the Kill Star, a powerful weapon that spends Rex's health rather than his ammo. This weapon is gained after an intense mission that sees Rex eliminate waves of the Running Dead, a zombified enemy created by one of Colonel Sloan's scientists. The Kill Star is a powerful addition to an already impressive lineup of weaponry that Rex can be equipped with. In addition to the Kill Star, Blood Dragon allows the player to switch between a handgun, a shotgun, a sniper rifle, a minigun, a flamethrower, a bow, and a phasertron that acts like an assault rifle. Some of these weapons can be upgraded through leveling up Rex. Some of these upgrades include silencers, laser sights, extended mags, and even explosive rounds. The main story's ending is exciting, but abrupt, and includes an underwhelming final sequence. There's not much to Blood Dragon's ending narratively other than a somewhat interesting plot twist. But the narrative is not necessarily the star of Blood Dragon. It's the game's setting and tone that make it an enjoyable experience. It capitalizes on what makes the Far Cry series fun, and it manages to deliver on many fronts. It gives fans of the series something familiar while providing newcomers with an outlandish setting and a comedic tone that might invite them to explore other entries within the series. But regardless of what you might think of Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon as a game, there's no denying the unique passion behind this project. The project itself was birthed at a Ubisoft Montreal game jam, where game developers would workshop different ideas for future games. This would ultimately lead to the creation of Blood Dragon. The game's visual style was heavily influenced by box art from 80s action movie VHS tapes. The electronic music used throughout the game was also influenced by the synthwave soundtracks found throughout the sci-fi films of the 80s. It also doesn't take much to realize that Rex Powercolt himself is a reference to action heroes of the past that were portrayed by the Arnolds and Sylvesters of Hollywood. Sergeant Rex Powercolt himself is voiced by Michael Biehn, who turns in the perfect performance as a futuristic cyber soldier. Biehn himself also has real-life experience as an 80s action hero, as he had previously starred in 80s classics such as Aliens and Terminator. Biehn was also thrilled to be part of this game and worked closely alongside developers to ensure that Rex's portrayal aligned with what both parties envisioned. It's difficult to tell how serious Ubisoft was about initially creating Blood Dragon, and this can't be made any more obvious by the fact that the reveal trailer for Blood Dragon was actually intended to be an April Fool's joke. Nevertheless, the feedback from fans of the franchise was positive, and the game eventually was made and released to the public. The DLC was a genuine success and no doubt sparked inspiration for future DLC projects released for the franchise. There is no overstating just how unique and influential Blood Dragon was at the time of release. A standalone DLC that intentionally separated itself from its base game and lived to tell the tale. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. Also feel free to leave a comment down below about what you'd like to see covered on the channel next.